Art is strange. It's something that we as humans have used for thousands of years to communicate with one another. History is recorded with it, stories are told through it, cultures are formed and inspired by it. Art, creation, these are elements of human existence that seem to be exclusive to the human experience. Art in all its forms is supposed to be something that we can share and understand intuitively. When we come into the presence of good art, we often feel it on a visceral level. It's something that we feel almost immediately. It's why Clair de Lune sounds good to us, and this sounds bad. In recent years, however, there has been a notable push to convince you that both of those sounds hold equal artistic value. A push to convince us that this painting holds just as much claim to the value of art as this one. So, let's dig into that. Hi folks, I'm Paul, and this is my take. Art is subjective, but it hasn't always been that way. There have always been preferences and tastes that are unique to us, and that's what causes us to gravitate towards certain mediums and pieces more than others. But I would argue that without objective, measurable aspects of artistic expression, like the skill of the artist or proper adherence to design principles, there would likely be few or no artistic movements throughout history. We wouldn't have these broad periods of artistic excellence like the Renaissance or the Baroque or Impressionist movements. Rendering is a very important part of artistic expression, but I wouldn't say it's the most important. It's not so much about how clearly it looks to us, but about how clearly it speaks to us. Humans from every corner of the earth, every continent, every culture, every society, have engaged in some form of artistic expression. And we can see this as far back into history as we have records of. Cave drawings, stone carvings, theater, tapestry, painting, sculpture, architecture, music, pretty much everyone from around the world, almost every single people group has practiced some form of artistic expression. And we as humans have been doing this for thousands of years, long before we knew that there were people on the other side of the planet doing something very similar. We had nothing in common with one another. No way to communicate with one another, except for one way. Art. A Japanese man might not speak a lick of German, but when he hears Beethoven, he hears and feels what the German feels. They both share that common understanding of this music, of this art being beautiful, being good, because it speaks a universal language that everybody can understand. Art is a language. And isn't it a beautiful thing that almost every single person across the globe can speak it? Nobody taught us how to do it. It was something that was built into us. It's something that God gave us so that we could give it to each other. It can even communicate things outside of language itself. And because of that, art is a very special and sacred thing. I visited the Museum of Modern Art in New York City in 2014, and the only emotion I remember experiencing as I looked at the art was anger. I was offended by the majority of the pieces. Not because it was obscene, although some of it was, but more so because I felt insulted by it. And one of the most offensive pieces I remember seeing was just this blank canvas, a white canvas on the wall. And next to it, it had a description that started with, "By reducing painting to a bare minimum," i.e., not painting. It was not a painting. It was not art. You hung a blank canvas on the wall and called it art, with no consideration for the meaning of art, the importance of art, the language of art. And by hanging this on the wall, you said nothing. You didn't even communicate the concept of nothingness. You did the painting equivalent of a chortling baby pounding random keys on a piano, except worse, because you possess the cognitive ability to communicate something more than that. And I expressed this frustration I was experiencing with the girl I was dating at the time, and she kind of teased me. She said I didn't understand it. She said that the purpose of the piece was to be interpreted by the viewer. It's a blank slate that you find the meaning within. And I agreed with her, and then said, yeah, that's why it's bad art. If you showed this symbol to someone in Guangzhou, they would probably know what it meant. If you show it to me, I don't know. I don't know what this means. But in places like Guangzhou or Hong Kong, this holds meaning. It communicates something very specific, and it holds the value in its ability to communicate that idea to the people who speak this particular language. Now, if you showed the same person from Guangzhou this symbol, they would have no idea what it meant. But if you showed someone from Uzbekistan what it meant, they would also have no idea, because this isn't a symbol for any language. It's something that I made up. It's art by me. But it's bad art because what it communicates can't be understood by anyone besides the creator. It's left up to your interpretation, and everyone who looks at this is going to assign some kind of random meaning to it, and so we don't share the same experience when we look at it. And if I were to insist that this was good art and should be hung on a wall of a very prestigious gallery, I would be insulting every single person who looked at it, because I would be taking up the time and space to say nothing to everyone in one of the only spaces where we possess the ability to say anything to anyone. The actual value of art must be measured by not necessarily how clearly rendered the subject material appears to be, but by how clearly it communicates something to us, not as individuals, but as part of a group, that being the elevated human species. Art as a practice lost a tremendous amount of value when we decided it was no longer about saying anything specific, but about how diverse of an interpretation we could garner from an audience. That's why a lot of modern art pieces require an explanation, and usually not a very clarifying one at that. When artists decided to create without intention, the language of art, the value of it, was lost. Artists stopped saying, "This work depicts that which is true," and they started saying, "What does it mean to you? What do you think is true?" And it might be fun to have a personal, unique experience that is special to yourself, but that's not the point of art. It needs to communicate something that could be universally understood. It needs to be something that connects you to the artist and the person standing next to you. It needs to be a shared experience. And if your art can do that, even if it's modern, even if it's weird, it's good art. It's valuable art. Now, I doubt that the vast majority of art at the MoMA was created with the intention of being insulting to the viewer. That idea was popular during the Dada movement about 100 years ago, and I think at this point it's pretty played out. Rather, and this might just be me talking out of my butt, but I think we might be in an artistic era where the goal is to conjure meaning. In the past, art would convey meaning. Some of the most famous and important pieces of art throughout history simply show us the purpose and meaning behind it. But today, art seems like it is trying to invent that meaning. And I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if that's possible. I don't know if it's possible to conjure meaning. Art today, so much of it is devoid of obvious beauty. And I wonder how much of that has to do with it being devoid of God, or just devoid of the idea that there are things greater than us. This isn't to say that every piece of art needs to be some kind of depiction of a story from the Bible, or even implicitly religious, in order for it to be beautiful. But if you were to look upon a Bierstadt, and then next to it look at a Warhol, which one would you say has a stronger reference to the divine? Which one would you say points us in a direction higher than us? And this isn't even to say that Warhol's work doesn't hold artistic value, but when it comes to communicating, when it comes to the language of art, Bierstadt doesn't need to conjure the meaning. He doesn't need to explain to you why this is beautiful. Truth and beauty don't require an explanation. We simply know it when we see it. Art has become bastardized in the last 100 years, and there's a couple reasons for that, and if you'd be interested, I could make another video on that. But while it has almost always been an element of high culture, it has recently been co-opted to be almost an exclusively aristocratic pursuit, and a way in which people of higher classes can sneer at people of lower ones. You don't understand the meaning of this piece? It's because you're poor. you're unsophisticated. You just don't get it. To which I would argue, poor and unsophisticated people probably understood the meaning and value of this. And that's why that'll be remembered in 1,000 years and this won't be. And it's not because it requires money to understand it, it's that it doesn't require money. When it comes to good art, the only requirement to understand it is that you are human. And I think there's something really beautiful about that. Anyway, that's all I've got for today, but what do you think? What do you consider to be good art? And what metric do you use to measure that? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you enjoyed this video and want to see more, I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I will see y'all next time.